We have today here, people are still joining, so that's why we have this intro, so people can take their time and join. Today we have with us another Sitecore user group in Brazil, this time our April edition, and we have proudly here receiving our biggest friend, community friend, co-worker, colleague, great person, Carlos Rodriguez. Welcome, Carlos, and we're so proud to have you here again. I think it's our second time together, so thank you.
No, thank you for inviting me. Absolutely.
Yeah, and today Carlos is going to put together one amazing session about fundamentals of Sitecore PowerShell extensions. Um, we do have in common a lot of people in the Sitecore community the passion for Sitecore PowerShell extensions that enables Sitecore to developers to do so many things without compilation. It's really something crucial in the Sitecore history, I think. Now in XM Cloud is already part of the thing. Um, in the new versions, it's already out of the box. So yeah, it's very powerful. This intro is that's the agenda real quick. It's a one person only today. Um, and as usual, let's go through some of the announcements. What's going on in the Sitecore world? First of all, I think that I'm very jealous because some of the MVPs are already getting their trophies and the swags. This year, I will be fully branded because I have from the head to the bottom uh, Sitecore logos in my swags. This year, it was the second year in a row they are using a third-party service provider, Ladybug, to deliver the swags to the MVPs. And we, for the first time in a long time, we had the chance to choose our swags. I think that's a good thing. Make things very simple. I remember some years ago, people are getting their award maybe in the end of the year after, you know, in the second semester, and that's not happening anymore. That used to be very frustrating. So you got yours, right, Carlos?
Yes, I did. Actually, I'm wearing one of them. Got my new polo shirt.
A polo shirt.
And I know for me, I got a hat and a t-shirt and a skull cap. So, like I
Nice.
was able to,
Congrats.
thanks. Like I was able to choose my own stuff.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I like it as well. There's no surprise anymore, but at the same time, you can choose your stuff if you don't like something, which is so cool. All right. We still have 6 days until the end of the call for papers for the Sitecore Symposium. If you want to be in the Sitecore Symposium, the shortest way, the cheapest way is to submit your paper, get it approved, because then they will give you the ticket for free. All you have to get sponsored for is your flight, your travel, and hosting, which also is, of course, is not cheap, but you don't have to pay for the ticket. It's already a big thing. Uh, I've been selected in the past, sometimes, sometimes not. This year I have a bunch of ideas to submit. One is already there. Some more is coming. Are you submitting anything, Carlos, or uh, so thinking about that?
I'm thinking about it, but I'm going to submit one or two ideas and see if they bite. So we'll see. Um, I
Yeah.
still really like my topic on writing blogs, so I might even submit that and see if they want us to have a discussion about that.
One thing that called my attention is that these two things actually. One, last year they had a track for AI only, and
Hmm.
this year all the four tracks have AI included,
Mhm.
so everywhere is AI. And the second thing is this year they have a new type of session format, which is a workshop. And
Mhm.
normally they used to have a fireside. It's a very limited, nobody submits to that because it normally you have one or two firesides chats in the whole symposium. A breakout session, a normal one, 30 minutes, a panel where you have panelists debating about something. And now they have this new workshop format, which is the idea is it's a 45 minutes, not 30 minutes, but you have roughly 50% of that time speaking as a speaker and the other 50% having your audience participating somehow. Uh, because it's a new session format, I think people
Mhm.
don't know what to expect. Um, in one of these MVP lunches, it was informed to us extra, like it's not NDA, but that this is not a format they are testing. This is a format they are testing. So most of what they are thinking is maybe involve people in a debate, in a conversation, like in a round table. So that's maybe something to explore, a thought to explore, right? It might be hard to have like attendees with their own notebooks logging somewhere. Maybe it's too much, but speaking about something, it's not too much. So those two things. Um, yeah, recently Sitecore, this very fresh one, announced this new AI innovation lab. And from what I could understand, they're still releasing news every day because it's something very new, very fresh. What I could understand, it's a way to offer their clients, Sitecore clients, the ability to test their ideas involving AI and like designing the idea in a way that makes sense and implementing that to test as soon as possible in POCs, in efforts that are not necessarily a final end um, let's say production ready product, but something they can test and think about. There's still a lot to talk about that. I have no clue more than what is in this new letter, but I think that's an important initiative, I think, from Sitecore to partner with Microsoft and offer the clients a way, what they're calling AI Innovation Lab. Have you heard about this? Or is this
Mm,
the first time?
For me, it's the first time.
Yeah, it's very recent and people are still asking themselves, what is this? Um, yeah, let's see. Exciting future ahead, I guess. And Carlos, we got this new block in our intro where we have we call that the code review justice league, and we want to encourage you to speak about your profession in unusual ways. Okay, so we
Hmm.
have a few questions for you, and feel free to take your time to think. First, what is the most embarrassing professional misstep in your career in the early times that you take now as it's cringe probably, but you take as a lesson?
um, as I think about this, I remember something embarrassing. I wouldn't necessarily call it a misstep, but it was still, for me, at the time, I was sort of like, oh man, what am I going to do now? But now I laugh about it all the time. In one of my previous roles, this is probably easily 25 to 30 years ago, when I used to do software training and I would teach people how to use certain types of software, like Microsoft Office and things like that.
Mm,
Um, I was setting up my classroom. This was in New York City, and I was setting up my classroom. And back in those days, I had to wear a suit to teach. And as I'm setting everything up and I'm walking around my desk, there's an exposed piece of metal underneath the chair. And it grabbed right behind my knee and tore my slacks almost all the way around the knee. So I was freaking out because this was like my first class that I'm teaching. And I had like 45 minutes to figure out what to do. So here I am in the middle of New York City. Luckily, it was New York City, so there weren't too many clothing stores. There were enough clothing stores close by, even though I was in an office building. And so I'm in the middle of New York City sometime in the morning walking around like I got mugged because my slacks are torn all the way around. But luckily, I was able to find a Gap and purchase a pair of slacks, and that's what I taught with that day. But that still makes me laugh.
Oh,
So, only thing I could take from that was, yeah, just be careful of your surroundings and make sure that you're aware of things that could damage your clothing.
I think you learned that in the funny way, but at least you're safe, right? I'm
Yep.
glad you are.
Yeah.
All right, next one. Which is the harder mission? Convincing a client they need a better website, or explain to your parents what you do for a living?
I think it's the first one because at least with my parents, I'm not going to get into a conflict. You know, I'll tell them what as much as I can tell them to help them understand, and they'll just, take it with a grain of salt, even if they're not exactly sure what I'm saying. But when you try to convince a client that they need a better website, that usually implies that their current website is not any good. And some people take that to heart, particularly if they were involved in building the website. So, even though you're trying to move them in the right direction, that could be very difficult if they're not prepared to absorb the advice.
That's true. That's true. Well, next, we know that you have just recently went through a career transition where
Hmm.
you're still in the blood, a developer, but now acting as a business analyst. So the first question we have for you is, what is the cringe equivalent? That's a curiosity I have. The cringe equivalent in BA of building websites with XSLT.
Um, I think what came to mind was what comes to mind when you ask me that is when people ask you to do something with a website that from a development perspective, yeah, that's not how that works. Um, and because I do have developer chops, you know, um, even from the perspective of being a BA, if they're like, well, we want the site to do this, and I think you should be able to do this, and I'll look at them like, do you know what you're asking? um, then I would have to explain to them that's not how this stuff works technically. You have to look at it through this perspective and then decide if it's worth the cost of making that type of change or whether we should just take a whole different route altogether. Probably the only other thing I could think of is when you design something based or you come up with a set of requirements based on your understanding of what they wanted and then only to find out that you were completely way off. So
Yeah.
you have to then start from scratch.
Well, all right. Yeah, I've seen something like that. Client asking for, can you make the check boxes round and the radio boxes squared, please? Was like, okay.
And you're like, yeah,
Uh,
that's not how that works.
and the last one, what's more nerve-wracking? A PR rejected for just a formatting issue, or a stakeholder with just one more change in the last minute?
Yeah, usually when they say one more change, like you just implied, it's last minute, and you're looking at them like, but we're going live with this tomorrow. There's no time to make one more change. So usually I respond with, you expect that to get done the next sprint, right? Because then it's not going in this sprint. That's just not going to happen. Usually if I have a rejected PR, even if it's just a formatting issue, I try to take it as a learning experience, even if I don't always agree with why we went in that direction. Um, it's only nerve-wracking if, it's the 11th hour, and if I don't get this done within that hour, it's not going live when it's supposed to go live. Then it's more nerve-wracking. But usually I try to have an attitude of, well, it's a learning experience, and, you know, even if it's tomato versus tomato, there's always something to learn there, and there's no reason for me to get too emotional about it or whatever the case may be. The last minute change is definitely more of a nerve wracking, like, why now? you know, so that's usually when I get into, this is not going live till the end of the next sprint, right? Because it's not going live tomorrow. That's just not going to happen. If we got to hold up deployment over this, you got to talk to a lot more people than me to make that happen. So I suggest you start making some phone calls.
Carlos, I really believe that joking is a perfect way to speak seriously. And
hmm
that's why this section feels weird because we're talking about reality in the end, right?
hmm
And just the icing on the top of this moment is what everybody loves. The moment to crickets. It's where you speak so enthusiastically about something for minutes and minutes in a row, and then you stop and you just listen crickets because nobody's speaking anything.
hmm
What is your preferred moment to cricket, or one that you can share with us?
Um, in situations, I might have trouble coming up with a specific example, but I know in these situations, particularly as someone who's done training before, usually what I try to do if that happens is I start cracking jokes and see if I can get people to participate in that. And you know, I try to be, a little self-deprecating as I start with the jokes because, I don't want to make anyone feel bad. Um, you know, so I might start off with saying something like, would I just say that terrible? Did I lose you guys? Do you hate what I'm talking about? Would you rather be doing something else? Where can we meet in the middle? um, and try to see if I can get people to participate or what have you. I know I've had classes where usually we do an icebreaker to get to know each other a little better so I can better gauge the audience I'm dealing with. And usually when things are quiet, that's a good time to bring some of that stuff back up. Um, the one I can't seem to forget is I remember someone introduced themselves, and I don't even remember what the icebreaker question is, but what I vividly remember was them saying, "And I'm looking for a date." And I'm like, okay, a little thirsty, but you know, but that would be one of those situations where I'd be like, "Are you still looking for a date?" Because now would be the time to ask whoever in this room you're interested in that you want to go out with them. Um, but but I try to avoid putting anyone on the spot. I rather put myself on the spot, and then we'll see where things go from there.